generation of warfare, psychological warfare. In modern conflict, the mind is a potent weapon. Discover General Michael T. Flynn's groundbreaking guide, The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. Unlock tactics, strategies, and the mindset to navigate this cognitive battlefield that we all find ourselves in. Equip yourself against manipulation and emerge unscathed. Unleash your potential. Order now.
How's it going, everybody? This is the Alpha Warrior Show. I'm your host, Alpha. I have a great guest that's returning. We're going to have some great conversation. We're even going to talk about the State of the Union because I see a lot of information circulating about that on people's thoughts. But before we do, streaming ain't free, and I got to keep the lights on in this house. So let's get it to a quick sponsor. First on deck, you guys, Goldco. Listen up, digital dollar. Right now, looks like the government's pushing for that digital dollar, which could mean every penny you spend could be tracked and controlled by the government. If that's true, then your entire life could depend on people you don't know, like, or even trust. That's why smart Americans are opting out and putting some of their savings into real gold and silver. So how to help? Well, you can go to alphalikesgold.com to get yourself the information to get a free 2024 gold IRA kit from my partners at Goldco. It shows you how to protect your hard-earned money with physical gold and silver, even if it's in a retirement account. And as an American citizen, you could score up to $10,000 in free silver just for safeguarding your savings. So at the very least, arm yourself with the knowledge about your options. Don't be the sheeple. Don't hesitate. So go to alphalikesgold.com now to get your free 2024 gold IRA kit and our next commercial, America's Favorite Mustache. And then I'm coming back with our guests, My Pillow, My Store, Mike Lindell.
My Towels solved the problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made My Towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of My Towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring spun cotton that makes My Towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get My Towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all My Towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now.
mypillow.com.
So once again, that's alphalikesgold.com and My Pillow or My Store. Promo code Alpha works at both of those places. Go support Mike, and we support Mike. You support all the content creators, influencers, whatever you want to call us, podcasters like myself, and you help that man. Now, let me bring on the gentleman you guys want to hear from tonight, Mr. Nate Cain. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. It's good to see you again.
No, likewise, brother. We've grown a lot since the last time that we had you on. You know, glory to God on that one. But that also means that there's probably people that are like, "Who's Nate Cain? You know, why does Alpha have him on here?" And by the end of the show, I know that that will definitely be answered. But while they wait to get all the information from you, tell us a little bit about yourself, Nate.
Sure. So, I guess what I'm most kind of well known for is back in 2017, 2018, I made 2 disclosures. I was working for the FBI and I became an FBI whistleblower. In fact, the first to use the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act. And I brought forward information to both the House and Senate Intel committees and the DOJ IG Michael Horowitz and exposed the FBI's cover-up of Hillary Clinton's crimes related to Uranium One and several other criminal cases that involved money laundering, securities and exchange fraud, public corruption, and terrorism financing. After I came forward and I like I said, I did it the right way, going through proper channels. It didn't take long before the FBI raided my home with 16 agents. They basically turned over my house, took everything, all of my electronics. They took, of course, the thumb drive that I was authorized to maintain according to the IG. And the reason I was authorized to maintain that is because had the Intel committees not done anything, I could have taken it to the judiciary. But they, didn't matter. They basically raided me, took it. One agent in particular, made my life a living hell and kind of saw it as his personal, vendetta against me. Clearly he had bias, and eventually I reported the harassment and he was removed. But the damage was done because one of the things that happened was, as I was outed, I had anonymity that was, protecting me. And once my name was out there, I ended up, having death threats. I got poisoned twice. I had somebody loosen the lug nuts on my vehicle. And eventually we decided we had to move, that we had to leave, our dream home. And so when we were looking to move, we looked, where can we move that's going to be safe, where we can protect ourselves. And West Virginia made the most sense. And so we moved to West Virginia back in 2020. I ended up working on election integrity, I guess, because I've had a career in cybersecurity, primarily with the Defense Department for 27 years. I've had a top secret clearance that entire time, and still maintain that. But I had because of my background, I think, with that and certifying government IT systems, under cybersecurity, and because I passed probably the Trump team sniff test, after I exposed Hillary, I was called and asked if I would join a team to investigate election integrity after the 2020 election, which I did. Did that for 3 months down in Arlington, Washington, D.C. area. And then I ended up doing some work up in Wisconsin with Judge Gableman. And then I went back to work, and COVID was kind of in full swing now. And I was told, hey, you're going to have to get vaccinated, or you can't work in this job anymore. So I said, all right, well, then I guess I'm starting my own company. So I started my own company, and it's been rather successful. And I was enjoying life, getting my anonymity back, enjoying being a West Virginian and having freedom. And then in November of 2022, I saw kind of the same kind of, tactics that were used in 2020 in many of the states that we had problems with before. And I was just very, just frustrated and kind of depressed over the state of our country. And so I've learned over the years that, it's best to take your fears and take your concerns and your anxiety to the Lord. And so I prayed. I said, God, I pray that you'd raise up righteous men and women to run for office. And then I heard that still small voice say, what about you? So I didn't learn my lesson from the Army, never bring up anything you don't want to be voluntold to do. So here I am. I'm a candidate for U.S. Congress for the 2nd District of West Virginia. And I'm, been running since basically, 2022 November. I think I kind of filed my paperwork in December, but, really I couldn't officially announce until January. But we have been making our way. And what this has been is I've learned that it's been a very interesting journey, because I'm not running my campaign in any way that I've seen any candidate run a campaign, to be honest with you. So we'll see what's going to happen, because as I've gone and been doing this, I started off as a reluctant candidate, but as I've traveled around the state, I've fallen in love with the people of West Virginia, and I've made so many close friends and so many people that I would consider like family now. When we go and we travel, first we were staying at hotels and things like that when we'd be on the other side, because, it's 5.5 hours to the furthest point of my district. It's a very large area. But as we made friends with people and started talking with them and learning about their needs, and, we started fighting for their issues, we have people now, we're staying in their homes. They're putting us up, they're feeding us, we're breaking bread with them. And now when I'm out there fighting on some of these issues, I feel like I'm fighting for my friends. I'm fighting for my family and my friends all over the state. And where I've had political consultants that have told me, oh, you need to do this, you need to be doing that. And I pray about it, and the Lord's like, no, you don't need to do that. I want you to do this instead. And I'm like, well, God, that kind of seems like the opposite of what most candidates are doing. And he's like, exactly. I'm like, all right, well, okay, God. So instead of focusing on endorsements and focusing on money raising and going out there and getting all the packs and everything, we have taken in almost all of our money. Well, no, all of our money has come in from direct donations from candidates, with the exception of, I think there was a sheriff who was running who dropped out of the race, and he donated $500 of his campaign funds to our campaign. That's the only amount that we've taken in from anything other than direct donations from individuals, and it's come in from 40 different states. And I've only held one official fundraiser, and that was a ladies' tea where it was like $50 to come there, and we invited, I think, like 30, and 15 said they were going to come, and only 8 showed because it was raining that day and everybody was sick with COVID. And so, but we had 8 ladies that showed up at this tea. It was only $50 to get in. We ended up raising $1,700.
Nice.
And and so that's kind of the things that we've been seeing, is that God has been providing, and He has been opening those doors. I ended up getting the endorsement from General Flynn, and and a lot of, quite honestly, what I've learned about this process of running as a candidate is that it's corrupt. Oh my gosh, it is unbelievably corrupt. It's no wonder we have corrupt politicians, because they corrupt you during the candidate stage. And so the reason I brought that up right after talking about General Flynn is because actually General Flynn was one of the few endorsements that I actually tried to get, where I didn't have to pay him off in order to get an endorsement from him. It's unbelievable how many members of Congress that I've spoken to, and and I have to be vetted by their consultant, and their consultant essentially makes it clear that if I want the endorsement of that candidate and I got to go through them, I got to hire them as my consultant. And it's just like, it's so corrupt. I've had at least one member of Congress who's like, oh, unless your campaign gives me $200,000, you can forget it. So I'm just like, are you kidding me? And so I'm like, at the point where I was just like, well, I'm not, I got General Flynn's endorsement, and that's great. And Ivan Raiklin endorsed me, and that was great. And I had some other, kind of media people, that have endorsed me, and and that's wonderful. The biggest one was probably like the National Owner Operators Association. They were on a Twitter Spaces, and I was listening. This is the independent truck drivers, across the United States. I sat down and I listened to them for like an hour, and then I said, hey, can I call you guys later? And I'd like to learn more about what the issues that you are dealing with. And I reached out to them, and I called them, and I talked to them for 3 hours and came up with some ideas on what I think could help. And I guess, they were impressed by that, because, I took the time out of my schedule to actually listen to them. And I didn't even ask for their endorsement, but they gave it to me. And that was awesome. I mean, really, if you're thinking about it, that's really the way it should work, but that's not the way it works, unfortunately. And so oftentimes when you see people and they're like, oh, I got this endorsement, I got on there. Yeah, they paid for those endorsements. They made a big contribution to that organization. And some of these organizations are ones that you would never expect would be bought off like that. But it is, unfortunately, it's the game. I had one friend of mine who's running for office, and I was talking with him, and I like this guy a lot. So I'm not going to say his name, but I told him, I said, I'm not going to play those games. I'm not going to, go take the money from the corporate PACs, because especially if the corporate PAC is for a corporation that is in conflict with something that the people are dealing with, there's a conflict there. If I take money from them, then how can I represent the people? And so I decided not to go that route. And, and I've probably not taken in as much money as, I would have gotten had I gone that route. But what ended up happening was, my friend was like, he said, he was going to do the same thing, but then he just, he found out that it was like impossible to raise money otherwise. So he's like, well, I'm just going to play the game until I get in, then I'll change it once I get in. But that's like, to me, and I told him, I said, well, I said, look, you got to do what you got to do. But the way I look at it is, I'm building my foundation right now. And I don't want to build my foundation on sand. I don't want to build it on a lie. I want to build it on what I believe in. And I think the difference is probably trust. I trust that if it's God's will for me to be elected, I will be elected no matter what. And as long as I'm doing my part and doing the right thing, I'm going to get elected. But if I have to, lie, cheat, and steal and align myself with organizations I shouldn't be aligning myself with, or take bribes and things like that, then I don't want to be elected, because I don't want to be a party to a corrupt system. Right off the get go, right out the gate. Even if I see it as a means to an end, I'm not a means to an end type of person. There's some people that believe that way. I don't. I believe that how we conduct ourselves, how we live our lives, it is and probably part of the reason I'm this way is because I have a very strong faith in Jesus Christ, and I recognize that a big part of my purpose here in life is to be a testament, and a testimony, of Jesus Christ. And how can I do that if I'm living by double standards? So it's a hard life to live. It's not an easy one, but this life is just a flash in the pan compared to an eternity. And so that's kind of how I feel about it. But that, I think, in a nutshell, kind of breaks down who I am and, kind of what my background is. So I did serve in the United States Army, and so I'm a veteran, and spent, like I said, most of my career working for the DoD, either as a contractor or as a DoD employee. So,
and your whistleblower story, I'm sorry, is extremely fascinating, as well as life changing. And for those that are curious about that and don't know about it, I'll include that link down in the description. You can go watch the show where me and Nate covered that. One of the things that you said, Nate, that I really, really respect and appreciate is that I'm not going to play that game the way they want. Knowing that it makes the battle uphill even harder, but it's also the right way to do it. And the reason I respect that, I was in a space, I don't know, maybe you probably even had dropped by a few days ago. And it's from an account I really like, Alex Finn. He brings humor to things that are true though in the process, and he talks to people how to be successful on X, formerly Twitter. Like what he's discovered in the algorithms, and other people were giving their advice, and one particular woman that came up, and she knows her stuff, was explaining how on X, if you communicate with accounts that are below where you got to click see more. And my apologies for those of you that don't have Twitter or X and are, what are you talking about? First of all, I already told you need to go in the trenches of warfare, information warfare, and get in there with me. So shame on you. Get an account and get in the fight. But for those that do have it, there's you'll see a comment and you'll have to click the see more to see what people are writing. Well, those people are in the naughty list of X according to the algorithm. And what she was explaining is that when you communicate with those people, it actually hurts you in the algorithm for communicating with them. So she says, don't communicate with those people. And I was just like, but there's voices down there that need to be heard. There's messages down there that need to be heard. And I don't care if I'm 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. I'm gonna correspond with those people, or I'm gonna repost those people. Like I'm gonna do my best to bring their message to the surface. And if that hurts me in the algorithm, so be it. I'll use the other tricks and trades that we hear here to kind of bring you back up again. Because if you go by their system, then ultimately we're doing the self-censorship for them. And it's the same thing like what you're saying, is if I'm going to play the game to get into politics and then think, well, once I'm in, now I'm going to stop. It doesn't work that way. The easiest, I won't say the easiest, but the most probably pushback I think you're ever going to get is trying to get through that door into Congress or the White House, or whatever position it may be. Once you're there, how are you going to institute change when they can hold all that against you? Well, you did this, and you did that, and you took money from here. You're compromised. Even if you try to do it well intentioned, you're talking about the machine that knows. They know narrative warfare. They know exactly. Well, listen, here's a $2 million commercial ad that's going to run coast to coast for the next week. That's going to talk about how you took money from this company and you did do this and you did do this, and then your credibility is destroyed. So I just wanted to say, man, I really respect your approach to this. And once again, if God's calling you to do it,
that's right.
Then don't worry about where the money is going to come
This
from.
is what he's told me is don't strive. And I had a dream. This was back in Labor Day weekend. I had a dream right before that weekend. I think it was like Friday night. I think we were leaving the next morning, Saturday morning, to drive out to this place called Paden City, where they were having a water crisis out there. And I went to bed that night, and I had my shoulder. I've had a torn rotator cuff, most likely. I believe it or not, I've been waiting for a year and a half, and I'm finally getting my MRI today. Thank God. That's how long it took me to get one, because the VA's MRI machine was broken. They had to make me go through, jump through all these hoops in order to get one done outside of the VA. But yeah, so what's going on, man? VA, why can't they get their equipment fixed? That's a whole nother congressional issue I'll be dealing with. But anyways, I had a lot of pain that night, and so I slept down on the couch so I could kind of prop myself up and away from my shoulder, and I had a dream that night, and it was powerful. And I won't get into all the details of it, but just suffice to say that the Lord showed me very clearly that what he wants me to do in my campaign is focus on serving the people. And if I do that, he will do the rest. And I don't need to worry about striving, in all those political ways that most people do. And it may seem crazy to most people. I mean, my wife is my campaign manager. We're staying at people's homes. We're being, fed in their kitchens, and we still need money because we got to raise money to do things like buy signs and do some radio ads and things like that. But it has, we're being frugal, and more importantly, I'm focusing on serving. And so the whole point of going out to Paden City was these people had their water shut off for a month, and the government would just basically left them high and dry. They had a polluted aquifer, and they had a machine called an air stripper, which was basically blowing tetrachloroethylene, which had contaminated their aquifer. It blows it out of the water as it comes up out of the well, and the machine had broke down, and and so they basically were testing until levels came down to normal levels, because the city water got contaminated due to a broken valve. And so I went out there with the intent of interviewing people. But that morning, before we went out, I had this dream. The Lord showed me, focus on serving the people, and he will do the rest. And when I woke up, the presence of the Holy Spirit was so strong over me. I woke up in tears, and I woke my wife up and told her what I dreamt about. And then we left, and we were driving in the car, and I was supposed to be making phone calls to setting up appointments and all of that on the way there. I could not stop weeping. Like, the Lord was showing me his heart for America. He was showing me his heart for for West Virginia and for the people of Paden City, and really just showing me how grieved he is over where we have come, what we've become as a nation, and really over the judgment that is coming on our nation because of it. So while I have a message of hope in one sense, in that, God, I don't think God would be calling people like me, and there are many others, by the way, that have felt called by God to run. I don't think that I think that's a good sign that things are beginning to turn. But the problem is that the damage is done, and there are going to be consequences now for the way that we have not respected life, the way that we have sought after greed and pleasure rather than seeking to be of service and self-sacrifice. And instead of having character, we've displayed all of those characteristics that are really the flesh, and God's not pleased with it. And so on my way there, when I finally got there, my regional coordinator said to me, "Goes, oh, what? So what's going on? Did you make some phone calls?" And I'm like, "No." So I told him the truth. I'm like, "Look, I had this dream last night, and I just couldn't stop weeping the whole way here." And he said to me, and and I don't know where his faith is and everything, but I've just learned I can't separate things, anymore. So I just tell the truth, and I let the cards fall where they may. And so my regional coordinator, John, he goes, He goes, okay, well, that's interesting. And he goes, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, let's just go down in the town and we'll see what God does. And so I just said, let's pray before we go. And so we prayed, and then we drove down there, and we had found out they had a music in the park type of thing going on. It was a hot day. And literally the moment we cross over the city limits, now mind you, I've never been to this town. There's 3 of my signs. And then there's 2, then there's another one, then another one, then another one. And these are all on the main street going through the town, like in the most prominent places that you can imagine. We turn down towards the park. There's 2 more of my signs. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? I've never even been to this town. My signs are all over it. I look like I own the town. And it was like God was showing me, see, I told you, you focus on serving and I will take care of the rest. And what has happened is, as I focused on serving, God has placed volunteers in my campaign that are like the people who everyone knows and trusts and loves. And so when they go out and they tell people, you need to vote for Nate Cain, they're listening. Or in the case of what happened in Payton City, is a lady who actually had heard me originally on Red Pill 78, saw me at the county fair about a month earlier, and came up to me. She was all excited and everything. And I said, well, hey, do you want to volunteer for our campaign? We got a parade next week down in Parkersburg. She came down to Parkersburg, and unbeknownst to me, after the parade, she met with my regional coordinator, and she got like 10 signs. And then she went home and gave it to her husband, who her husband's one of the most prominent people in this town. He's well respected and loved by everybody in this town because he's a good man. And he has, lived there his whole life. And so he went around knocking on doors, and he's like, oh, hey, he knows these people. He's like, hey, let me tell you about this guy, Nate Cain. And do you mind if I put a sign in your, oh yeah, sure. So no problem, Charlie. So that's how God has been operating in my campaign. And it's been amazing. And the beauty of it, of running a campaign this way, is no matter what the outcome is, if I, win or lose, if I lose, I don't feel bad about all the time and money and effort that I spent over the last year and a half, on all this. It won't feel like a waste to me, because I'll know that I've done some good with that campaigning and with the things that I've been doing. So I've been fighting for people's, right to clean water. I've been fighting for mineral owners and their right to be paid, their fair and just equitable share. I've been fighting for parents' rights, and so we wrote a Parents' Bill of Rights, submitted it to the House to Delegate Scott Heckert, who sponsored it, and then we went down and lobbied it in Congress, and it passed the House. It was in the Senate committee, and now it's come out of the Family Committee. It's in the Judiciary. But I mean, like, these are, we're actually making a difference before I'm even elected, and that, I think, is worth its weight in gold in terms of showing to the people of West Virginia why they should vote for me, because I'm willing to fight for them even before getting elected. And the truth is if I don't get elected, I'm still going to fight for them, because, the cat's out of the bag now. And I am, committed, to fighting for my friends and my family and, the people that I love here in the state. And so that's what's going on. So it's just been an exciting, campaign.
That does sound exciting, man. And to be like, let's just pray and let's just go, and to, watch it unfold the way it did. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that gives you goosebumps.
Yeah. It kind of feels like evangelism a little bit,
It does. It does. And, I've, the same, people reach out to you, people reach out to me, and they'll be like, hey, Alpha, I love that, you'll do shows and you're not afraid to pray. Like, if you feel called to pray at the end of the show, you'll pray, people just won't do that, and I don't know if this part's a comment. They're like, you don't try to make it sound fancy, but you do make it sound real. And I'm like, well, I'm good with that. And, because I mean, my story and the plight that I got going on with the government. And, I just went to court, yesterday.
Oh, wow.
And it was just, hearing it's getting continued, but it got continued to June the 6th. And the reason that specific date is so important is that was my first day as a cop, was June the 6th.
Oh, wow.
And to, you see, it was one of those things where it hit me, right here.
Yeah.
And, you hear some of the tactics, that the prosecution's doing. I saw the way the judge treated a guy with an allegation of homicide against them, all kinds of gang tattoos all over. and another guy that's accused of a child sex crime, like batting for these guys, like, telling their defense attorneys, well, I think you need more time for this, in the discovery. And we, my attorney just found out about, some discovery, the day before we're going to court that was not even told to us, to include body cams and police reports. And so he's telling the judge, hey, we need some time to review this stuff. And, the way she attacked him and me by proxy, because he is my attorney, I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking, like, this is just so wrong.
Yeah.
And
It's interesting you bring that up, because when I was, like I mentioned, I worked on election integrity, and I worked for 3 months, harder than I've ever probably worked until now. I will say campaigning is hard work. When you saw like the stories in the Bible of Jesus, like, after he'd spend all day talking to the people and, healing people and doing all the miracles and everything, how he needed to like just go away and have time alone with God and recharge his batteries. I get that, because let's tell you, when you are, like I said, it's like ministry. If you're actually out there really talking, listening, really trying to solve problems, it is exhausting, because you're taking on all of the emotions of everybody else and hearing their stories, and you care. And so it drains you. And so you have to have that day of rest to just kind of recharge. But when I came out of the election integrity stuff, I was an expert witness in 7 different cases, including the one that went before the Supreme Court. Like I said, I was putting in, 18-hour days working on this stuff, like working more diligently than I've ever worked on anything, because I felt like our nation was at stake. I did this, by the way, on my own dime. Originally, we were told we were going to be paid. They never paid us. About a month in, I realized we weren't going to get paid. And so we had to make a decision as to whether we were going to do this on our own dime or not. And so I decided to do it on my own dime. And it was tough. But I'll tell you, when we came away from it, there's 57 cases that were brought. Not a single one of these judges allowed for an evidentiary hearing. Not one. They just flat out rejected the cases. So when I got home, I remember I was so just depressed and feeling like, God, I thought you called me down there to do this work, and it feels like it was for nothing. What was the whole point of that, God? What is going on in our country? And I was kind of angry. I was kind of shaking my fist at God a little bit. And I heard very clearly, you'll find the answers to your questions in Amos chapter 5. And so I looked at Amos chapter 5, and anybody listening to you, I would highly recommend you go through and you read it. And what you'll find is it is a chapter that is like almost all about corruption in our courts. And, it talks about how the poor can't get a fair trial. It talks about how those that are powerful and rich, can manipulate, the courts. It talks about how those that tell the truth are despised, but those that lie, are propped up. It basically, you're reading it and you're going, this is America today. Everything I read in there was like, and it talks about how people are being overtaxed. It talks about how, they're having their property stolen from them. All of these things are talked about in there. And I go, wow, this is America today. And then what you see is God's judgment coming on the nation because of it. And one of the things that I find interesting is it says, love what is good and hate what is evil. It says, and work to maintain justice in the courts. And perhaps God will have mercy and will save a remnant. He doesn't even guarantee that God's going to, it says perhaps. So the judgment is here, folks. We are in the midst of it, the beginnings of it. It's here. And what you see all throughout history is, and all throughout scriptures, is that when judgment is brought onto a nation, that God does maintain a remnant, and he keeps those people safe, from a lot of the stuff that's affecting. You saw that in Egypt, where the Hebrews were living in the Goshen Valley, and the plagues affected the entire nation, but it didn't affect them. It didn't affect their homes. You saw that with the Passover. They listened to the Lord. They put the blood on the doorposts, and the spirit of death passed over their homes. You see it all throughout the scriptures. And so difficult times are coming, but if you put your faith in the right place, then God will get you through it. I guarantee it. Look, I love Trump, and I'd like to think that I'm going to do some good, in government, but man is not the answer. God is the answer. We need good men and women that are running for office. We need people who are going to fight for this country. They're going to fight for, American priorities. That's what America First is all about. But at the end of the day, our founders even understood that we needed providence. We needed God's help because there's too many things that are out of our control that we have no control over. And some people, they call it luck. I call it providence. And so that's where I'm hope. That's where my hope is. My hope is in God.
You know what? It's one, I have a resounding agreement with you because my mom told me when I was very young, because we were asking questions about, I grew up in the Catholic Church and we heard about, the sex crimes, from priests, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you never put your faith in man because man will always let you down.
Yeah, that's right.
Your faith is always in God because God will never fail. And, Amos 5, I'm definitely going to be reading today, because of what I'm hearing you say, because I'll tell you what, Nate, I have this routine and the missus knows about it. The kids understand that when court's done, I never come straight home because it's what you say. I'm inside. I'm angry, that everybody knows me on the show or on Spaces. Alpha's so calm, but I'm also human. And when you're being persecuted and it's unjust, it upsets you. And I know I have to let it unwind. So I have this routine where following court, I go to the car wash. And then while my car's getting washed, I do this little walk to this old little Mexican restaurant. I just sit there by myself and I get something to eat and just kind of,
good Mexican food always soothes the soul. I miss that, brother. Not a whole lot of good Mexican in West Virginia, I will tell you.
I'll send you some stuff, man. I got you. And I'm sitting there and I allow myself to digest everything and what's going on. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I do the same, and I'll shake my fist at God. I just don't pray to him. I tell him when I'm happy. I tell him when I don't understand him. I tell him when I'm upset with his decision. I'm going to agree and I'm going to let his will be done. But I also want him to know how I feel about it.
Every good relationship has arguments, including those with God.
And it's one of those
he always wins.
And he knows my heart, he knows our soul, but I still want to verbalize it because that's a relationship, right? Like you just said. And I'm having this is all following a conversation with my attorney after court and understanding the dirty tactics that they're going to do to get their way. And it doesn't look promising when you're like, but how can they get away with that, right?
Yeah.
And you realize that it's a lawfare, because I'm thinking like, well, how do we even stand a chance if we don't get to tell the jury this? Like, the jury has to hear everything. And he's like, well, they don't have to hear everything. They have to hear what the judge says that they can hear.
Yeah.
And I remember I'm upset and I'm like, God, like, why you bring me all here, to let me lose? And, everybody wants to hear in this part of the story that's like, well, I didn't say you were going to lose, keep your faith. But that's not what I heard. What I heard was, whoever said that this was about you winning. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that hurts.
Yeah.
That hurts because what I realized in hearing that was, this has never been about you, kid. Mm-hmm. I'm using you because I have faith in your strength because of your experience. But this is about people that are going to be saved through your testimony, which means you might have to get hurt in the end of this. And that's not what you want to hear. Like, if we're being honest, that's not what you want to hear. You want to hear, no, I'm going to stand tall and I'm going to be triumphant and all this. And who knows how God's going to have this play out. But it's one of those things where you have to ask yourself, and I say all this to say this, because I think we're here as a nation, is this about you? Or is this about everybody?
Yeah.
Because when you plan things in life, we plan them around us and our household and our family. If you plan something that's for the collaboration of not just our nation, but all nation and all mankind, those plans are probably going to look a little different. And if we're putting God first, I'm also America first. I'm MAGA. I stand for Trump. I'd jump in front of a bullet for the man. But God first is where we need to be.
Yeah. Make
And
America great again. I say make America godly again,
yeah,
and it will be great again.
I agree with that.
There is a something you said really struck me, and you were talking about when God, told you it's not about you. Who said it was about you? And the story of Job is very telling. This is a man that was righteous. He never did anything wrong. Yet God allowed for him to, go through some very severe trials. One of the things about Christ is that when he was speaking to the people, he never said, "Follow me, believe in me, and everything will be wonderful." He said the exact opposite. He said, "People will hate you because of me." He promised them that. He says, "I promise you, people will hate you because you will be persecuted because of my name's sake." And that's what we have to realize that, as Christians, is that, it isn't. In fact, if you're not being persecuted, if you're not going through some sort of trial, believe me, there are moments where God gives you respite, because no human being can take that for, forever. They need moments of breaks, of relief. But if everything is going good in your life and you never seem to be under the attack of the enemy, you're probably not living in a way that is a threat to the enemy, because the enemy's only going to waste his time. He's not going to waste his time. He's only going to go after those who are a threat to him, who are a threat to his dominion on this earth. And God recognizes. I said something in a show, and I don't remember which one it was or where, but I've had a number of people that have told me, when you said that, that really hit home. And maybe it's because, West Virginia is kind of known as, especially in the Northern Panhandle, for their, their history of making steel. But the way that you forge steel is through the fire, and through hammering it. You take iron and you heat it up in, over 2,000 degrees, right? And you beat the crap out of it. And that is how you make steel. So if we want to be used by God, if we want to be used for his kingdom's sake, if we expect to be warriors for him, we got to understand that the training for that is not going to be easy. It's hard. It means we're going to get, heated up. We're going to be put through the fire, and we're going to have the crap beat out of us. And when we come out of it, we're going to be steel, and we're going to be useful for his kingdom, because that's just the way it is, man. That is life. That is the law of the universe. And anything that is worth anything, was created with great sacrifice and great trouble. And that's like that saying, easy come, easy go. If I find that true with everything in life. It's like a weird universal law. If I earn money and I had to work for that money, it seems like it sticks around a lot longer. Whereas if I have like some just windfall, man, that money's gone. It slips out of my hands as quick as it came. So, probably the only thing that gives me hope in all of this, right, is that this ain't forever. Like that, this will pass. Even the difficulties, the troubles, the trials, it will pass, and it's really, it is just a flash in the pan compared to an eternity. And what's going to matter is what happens after the race is done. And I'm talking about life. When we go stand before our Maker someday, and we're looking at him, and he says, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Those will be words that will give me great joy to hear. I don't want to get there and be like, what'd you do with your life that I gave you? I put you here and you didn't do anything. I put you there and you didn't do anything. I showed you stuff and you didn't say anything. And so on the back of my campaign T-shirt, I put the verse James. I think it's 4:19. I think I'm gonna have to double check it. I'm terrible at memorizing numbers, but it says, "He that knows the good that he ought to do and does not do it, it is sin for him." And that is really the truth of it. Sin isn't just doing evil. And I heard somebody say that sin is missing the mark. That's really like the literal translation of it. Like if you're shooting an arrow and you miss, you miss that mark. And so it's basically, it's not fulfilling the will of God, right? It says that in Matthew chapter 7, verse 21 through 23. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not heal the sick in your name? Did we not cast out demons? Did we not do all these things in in your name? Or and he'll say to them, depart from me, for I never knew you. And he says, and so when you think about that, it says, only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter into the kingdom of heaven. And that is a crazy thing to think about. But what it's saying there is that it's not about how good you are. It's not about how bad you are. It's about whether or not you had a relationship with God and whether you were listening and whether you're actually, were connecting with God. There's a lot of, I heard, somebody else told me, when we get to heaven, the first two questions we're going to ask is, hey, where's brother so-and-so? And how did you get here? Because the truth is, man, there's a lot of people going to church right now probably think they're saved because they read their Bible, they go to church. But you know what? When God's prompting their heart, to help their neighbor, they're ignoring it because they don't like their neighbor. Or when God's telling them, hey, I want you to run for office, they're ignoring it because they want to inconvenience themselves. Or when God's telling them, hey, I put you in this place and I just showed you some really, really bad stuff. Now I want you to blow the whistle. They're like, oh, hell no. That must have been Satan talking to me because, who wants to put their family at risk, right? God surely wouldn't ask me to do that. Well, this life is a very, very short amount of time and it's a test. And are we going to pass that test or are we not? I didn't think we were going to get into such deep topics, but there's a good koinonia between you and I, man. When we start talking about stuff, it's like, boom, I feel it,
There's when God wants a message to be heard, it's going to be heard, and I've always asked them, when it comes to this show, this podcast, keep my ego and my motive out of it, and whatever it is that I or my guest needs to say, let it be said. And that's why, before the show, I'll be like, hey, I'd like to cover these. But we don't script it. We don't say, hey, this is, it's just keep it authentic. And I think that's why the people continue to come. I think that's why we continue to grow, because people realize this is real, even when you have the glitches and the technical difficulties, it's just proof of, this is very authentic. And I think that's important. And I think it was absolutely hilarious. The saying is, where's brother so-and-so?
Yeah, isn't that great? I love that. Who told me that was a Presbyterian. I was going to like a Presbyterian youth group, and I was a brand new Christian, and so they had this youth pastor who would come on campus and from the local Presbyterian church, and he would talk to people. And I didn't even go to that church, but this guy, I went to him. I was really concerned because somebody told me, somebody told me the Mormons aren't saved, and I had this really good friend of mine who was Mormon, and I talked to him about Jesus, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I believe in Jesus." I'm like, "Okay, well, do you believe in that you got to accept Jesus in your heart to get saved?" And he's like, "Yeah, I believe that." And so I'm like, "Well, then what the heck, man?" So so I went to my youth pastor. I told him, I said, "So what's the truth here?" And that's when he told me that, and I thought, you know what? And what he was trying to allude to is that none of us really know about other people. That's between them and God. We only know about where our heart is with God.
Yeah.
And God doesn't care about, look, the truth is the truth, and there may be doctrines that are true and doctrines that are false. But at the end of the day, God doesn't say, you're going to go to heaven because you're a good Baptist, or you're a good Presbyterian, or you're a good Mormon, or you're a good whatever. That's not how it works. It's individual relationship between you and him. Does he know you? That's really what it said, right? Depart from me, for I never knew you. Does he know you? Do you have a relation with God? When you pray, do you ever stop to listen? Or is it a one-way conversation? Do you ever say, hey, Lord, all right, I'm going to shut up now. If there's anything you want to tell me, tell me. If there's anything you want to show me, show me. I'm going to be still and know that you are God.
And some may say this is anecdotal, but it's my experience, because of, my career, almost a decade and a half in law enforcement, and in the particular field, gangs and detectives and stuff like that. I was around a lot of death, and not just death, but the moment of death. Even in traffic accidents, that you're unfortunately present as people pass and people die. And the one thing that I notice, after too many times of seeing this, is when people would die, and not all the time, but definitely the majority of the time, I would recognize something, and it was either this sense of just peace or being okay. Like, I know you can't translate it into words because there's no words, but it's, body language and energy, like what you're seeing.
Right.
I could sense peace, like they're okay. And sometimes I could sense like this terror, like they just look
Hmm.
so scared. Now, with
Yeah.
that being said, what's interesting about what you said is those moments didn't always match the way those people look.
Mm-mm.
You would think, oh, it must have been the gang members that were scared.
Right.
Not always.
Yeah.
It must have been, the dad and the mom in the family car that were at peace. Not always. And I
Hmm.
just always just found it interesting, like, what the heck are people seeing or experiencing at that
Yeah.
moment that's creating one of those scenarios, And all
Yeah.
I knew was, I hope when I pass, I want it to be peace and okay. And then the answer to that is, like you said, what's your relationship with God look like? And I think that has a lot to do with it. We're in a society where we're, programmed to judge books by their covers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the worst
True.
part of that is they did such a good job of making us operate that way that now they're controlling what the covers are for people.
That's
And
right.
so
Social
now,
media, man. That's what propaganda is all about. It's all about, creating a label, that they can affix to somebody. Oh, this person's an insurrectionist,
well,
or
pause that thought, Nate, because I want to get this question out there,
yeah.
and it'll feed into the solution on your website, and that's NateCain4WV.com. You can get all the information about Nate and how to support him. But one of the things you have on there is take the red pill, and I'll bring that up on the screen real quick because I did have that ready to
Yeah, that was
go.
one of the things we talked about, yeah.
But
So
what does that mean to you? What's the message here?
so it I put it up there for a couple of reasons, okay? And so one of the, more kind of simplistic, kind of fun reasons I put it up there is I knew it would drive the left crazy, right? Because there was all this talking about the red pill, take the red pill, and all of that during the within the truther movement, within the patriot movement, within the Q movement even. And so I thought it would be kind of a tongue-in-cheek way of, kind of poking fun at them, at the FBI, who was monitoring all these people, and it would also be kind of a way of poking fun at the left, and who are constantly attacking the right and calling patriots conspiracy theorists and all of that. But where that term actually comes from is actually it comes from a movie, The Matrix. And when Neo, who is living in what he thinks is the real world, but it's not. It's just a fantasy world. Everything that he sees is an illusion. And he Morpheus says to him, he says, "Look, you can take the blue pill, and you go back to your life, and you'll wake up, and it'll just seem like this was a dream, and you'll continue along, living in that dream. Or you can take the red pill, and then you're going to find out how deep the rabbit hole goes." And what the red pill was all about was, it was about opening your ability to see the absolute truth, no matter how painful it is to see it. And it reminded me of the time when my wife went. She was in college at Humboldt State University, and I had moved up to Northern California, and I was not in college. I was working, and but I went to a class that she had just once to go, sit in on the class and monitor it, and it was her philosophy class. And the question was asked by the students. They basically said, if there was a machine that you could be hooked up to that would make everything in life seem perfect, you would not experience any pain, everything would go great, life would be good, all of that, but you wouldn't be seeing reality. or you could be unhooked from the machine and see reality and see all the suffering and see all the problems of life. Which would you rather be, connected to the machine or not connected to the machine? Now, mind you, this was way before the movie The Matrix ever came out. And that's basically what the Matrix is all about. And most of the people in the classroom said they'd rather be hooked up to the machine. I think my wife, myself, and maybe 2 other people, students, raised their hands, said they'd rather know the truth. And that was like very eye-opening to me because I couldn't believe it. I was like, really? You'd rather not know the truth just so you can have some comfort? And so what taking the red pill is all about, really, it's about waking up to the reality of what's going on. It's about not just ignoring, and not just buying into the media narrative, not just buying into, the what's a comfortable or convenient truths. But sometimes we got to sometimes we got to be exposed to those inconvenient truths, truths about our own government and their behavior, truths about our own, like you mentioned, like your, I think it was your mother said to you, just because somebody's a priest doesn't mean you can necessarily trust them. I remember my mom told me the same thing about, ministers, and her mom told her that too. That there's evil that exists everywhere, and we got to be awake. We got to be aware. And, and so that's what that's about. It's about, join me on this journey, of discovering what's really going on in this world, and, and being open, to the truth, and not just buying into what the narrative of what the media wants to tell you, what, your friends want to tell you, what your, the people that that your echo chamber wants to tell you, essentially.
I absolutely love the way you explain that and the Matrix, because I think people get too caught up in thinking, well, the red pill and the Matrix, that means, is this world like a physical, simulation, like Neil? And
Right.
I mean, maybe, who knows? But I think
Who knows?
what it really is trying to say is that what we're living, what we're seeing, is the simulation. And when you take that red pill, it's like you said, it's seeing the truth, seeing what our government unfortunately really represents right now. It's seeing that the people of this country aren't our enemies, that it's government that make us hate each other and make us fear each other.
Right.
I think people need to understand it's more along the lines of that. The last one I want to bring up, and this is also from your website, and because of Joe Biden, Crazy Joe made a statement last night during his State of the Union, and I was just like, got to be kidding me. So essentially, what Biden claims is that MAGA is the greatest threat to democracy since the Civil War. And on your website, it says Nate Cain supports the MAGA mission. So essentially, Crazy Joe is saying, Nate, you are the greatest threat to democracy. Your thoughts and opinions on that conversation, or that statement? I'm sorry.
So if so the interesting thing is Biden, he excuse me, what does he mean by democracy? Words matter, and the meaning of words matter. If by democracy he means authoritarianism, if by democracy he means the ability to coerce the American people into taking a untested vaccine, enforcing it on them. If by democracy he means succumbing to, nationwide surveillance and living under a police state. If by democracy he means not having the freedom, to be able to be an entrepreneur and start your own business because you're being, regulated and taxed out of existence. What does he mean by democracy? Because if that's what democracy is, then I don't want anything to do with it. But I will tell you, this country is a constitutional, representational, republic. It's not a democracy. Now, we practice democratic, we have democratic institutions of voting and things like that. But what a democracy is, and I hear this oftentimes quoted, they're a threat to our democracy. They're a threat to our, what democracy is? It's mob rule. That's what all the founders understood it as. A perfect example is You know who had a direct democracy? France. And and during the time, the American Revolution, that's what they had going on in France. And our founder said, you know what, we've been over there to France, and we don't want anything to do with that, because what you got over there is you got mob rule, you got people being beheaded, you've got the all kinds of crazy things going on. You have you have tyranny, and I don't want tyranny. So what MAGA is all about, Make America Great Again. It's about America first, about prioritizing, what are our, and really what MAGA, or what, let me break it down real quick here. America first, what is that about? It's about, we send these people down there to represent us. I don't send Alex Mooney, who's my representative, for this district of West Virginia right now. I don't send him down there to represent the Ukraine. I don't send him down there to represent the World, Economic Forum. I don't send him down there to represent the interests of South America. I don't send him down there to represent anything except for the interests of the people of this district of West Virginia. Now, my senator is supposed to be representing the interests of the state of West Virginia. And my president is supposed to be basically executing, the protection of our rights under the Constitution. Because what is it that our our illustrious forefathers said, right? Thomas Jefferson was writing the Declaration of Independence. We form these, governments are formed, right? What is it formed for? To protect our rights, our constitutional rights. That is the point of government. And if government ceases to do that, then it is the right of the people to abolish that government. And I don't mean abolish in the sense of, we're going to take over and have a coup. No. When they say abolish that government, they mean through the vote, through our process of representative government, and using democracy as a means of voting for our representatives. But it is representative government. It is a representative republic, that falls under a constitution, and that constitution limits the powers of the government. Our rights that are defined under the government are not positive rights. It doesn't say that, we have the right to do this or the right to do that. No, it's assumed that we already have that right. It says the right of the people, which already existed long before the government existed. The right of the people, that right will not be infringed by the government. That's what what they call negative rights. And that's an important thing to understand. So when Biden gets up there and he talks about MAGA is dangerous, no, MAGA is freedom. MAGA is liberty. MAGA is saying, hey, we need to focus on cleaning up our own house. We need to focus on America for a change. It is about, and this is a good way I like to put it too. There's kind of two examples I like to give. One's secular and one is scriptural. The secular one is this. Everybody who's ever ridden on a plane has to sit through, when they're given the whole speech about, okay, this is what you do, tuck your head between your knees and kiss your butt by, if we're going to crash, but the other one they say, though, that everybody knows, is that in the event that these airbags drop from the ceiling, don't first put it on your child, first put it on yourself. Because if you pass out, how are you going to help your child? So they always say, take care of yourself first, then start worrying about others around you and trying to help others around you. Now, there is a scriptural backing for that too. It says, "Do not worry about the plank that is in your brother's eye," or sorry, the splinter that is in your brother's eye. First, remove the plank that is in your own eye. Then you'll be more able to clearly see the speck that is in your brother's eye, and you can help him remove it. And so, when I see, that's what America First is about. It's not about America only. It's about making sure that we are taking care of our own. There's another scripture that is also, I think, very relevant, and especially with all the illegal immigrants that are coming into this country, that we need to be thinking about. And there's a scripture that talks about, that says that he who does not take care of his own family, that he is worse than an infidel. Now, I'm going to tell you, when we've got soldiers who have served this country and who maybe have some mental health problems as a result of that service, or some addictions as a result of that service. Because when you are in the military, especially if you're in combat, and even if you're not in combat, oftentimes our military veterans see terrible things, and they're placed in terrible situations where they don't get a lot of choices, and they have to go along with things, or maybe they survive, their combat unit being wiped out, and they've got survivor's guilt. There's a lot of issues that veterans have to deal with. And when I see veterans up in New York that are homeless, that were being housed in a hotel, and they were being kicked out to make room for people who have never served this country, people that have never paid a single dime of taxes into this country. They've never done anything for this country, and their first act in this country was to violate our laws. Yeah, I got a problem with that. I have a major problem with that. So that's where I see, when he says, MAGA is a threat. It's just rhetoric. He doesn't even know what MAGA is. He doesn't even know what I don't think he's ever served this country, honestly. He served himself. In fact, his own words betray him, because there is video of him when he was much younger, and he talks about how he's basically a prostitute. And that is the problem. Most of these people, I would say most, and I'm probably not exaggerating, and I'm probably not making any friends saying this, but I would say that probably most of them probably would agree, if they were being honest, that most politicians, they are prostitutes. And they've prostituted themselves to the, corporations, or to the lobby groups, or to the unions, or to, whoever's going to give them money. And what do we know is that the love of money, it is the root of all evil. It's not the money, it's the problem. It's the love of it. That's the problem. And guys like Joe Biden, who have sold out this country by allowing these deals with his son, for China, and he gets 10% for the big guy. I'm going to tell you right now, he is a traitor to this nation, and he deserves to be impeached. But unfortunately, there's not enough people right now in Congress that have the will to do what is right for this country. That man who stood up there last night to give this speech, he doesn't love this country. If he did, he wouldn't be allowing foreigners to come into it and violate our laws without any regard for who these people are. Look, you had 35,000 military-age men from China that came into this country across the border, and those are the ones they caught. How many came in here that didn't get caught? And the ones they caught, these guys, they came here with money. Somebody flew them over to, South America so they can make the trek up through, the Darien Gap, where they have a separate encampment for the Chinese. If we go to war with anybody, it is most likely going to be China. And Russia will probably come to their aid as well, possibly North Korea, and definitely Iran. We are looking at another possible world war. And meanwhile, you know what Biden's been doing? He's gutting the military. He's basically removing any barrier to our enemies crossing over our border so that they can be here to sabotage us in the event of a war. There are probably sleeper cells all over this country. But the fact is that he's gutting the military. I just read a report by the Heritage Foundation about our military and the state of it. Do you know right now that we are 1/3 under the forces necessary to defend our country? 1/3. So how do you make that up? Because they're doing stuff like, they're not really making the military an attractive thing for people right now. Who wants to give up your rights to be forced into woke, training courses where you're going to be told what you can and cannot say to people and what pronouns you must, use or not use? I mean, it has become really just a ridiculous experiment, sociology experiment. Then you had the military use an untested vaccine. Whether or not that vaccine was, was going to be effective or not, the fact that they used it and it had not even gone through official FDA testing at all, not in any way, shape, or form. This is the vaccine they gave the military. It's not the same one they gave to the civilians. they might as well have been gambling with the entire health of our entire military service members, because there are things called, vaccine injury that happens. And there have been thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of soldiers that have experienced debilitations now as a result of that. Then they kicked out 8,000 who rightfully said, I'm not going to follow this unlawful order. And I can say rightfully because the courts agreed. And so you had these people basically do this. So the military leadership, basically gutted our forces by kicking out anybody who had a backbone and anybody that was willing to stand up against an unlawful order. They did this to our government DOD employees. They did this to our DOD contractors too. So we're undermanned. They have not, and how much money have they spent on all this woke crap? How much money have they spent on all of the kinds of things, basically sending weapons and things like that to the Ukraine. And, and meanwhile, we don't have enough arms now to defend, ourselves in a two-front war. We don't have enough personnel. We don't have enough ships. They've stopped building ships. The Chinese have passed us up. In the Pacific Fleet, I think we've got something like 83 ships or something like that. You know how many the Chinese have? They've got something like almost 200.
Jeez.
Yeah. And then Russia has about, 56 or something like that. So it's like, what are these guys thinking? They have basically, it's like they have basically stripped themselves bare, and then they've opened their kimono to all of our enemies and said, hey, I'm over here. Why don't you come attack me? They have, they've not done the things that they've not advanced in technology, to give us a technological advancement. That is what has kept us safe really over the years. Is it's not just the size of our force, but it's been the technological advancement of our force. I think their assessment was that the Army, the Army's assessment was weak. The Air Force's assessment was very weak in terms of their readiness. The Navy's assessment was weak. The only one that had a positive assessment was the Marine Corps. The Marines were actually assessed at very strong. And the reason for that is because under the law, the Marines are only required to be to have the strength of a force to be able to defend, in one war. But the other services are supposed to be able to defend against a two-front war. And they don't have enough resources, they don't have enough people, and they certainly don't have enough training. The reason that the Navy and the Air Force in particular are in bad shape is because they're heavily dependent upon their ships and their aircraft. And right now, they're not rolling out enough aircraft so that our guys can continue to get the flight time, or our ships can get, continue to get the sea time to actually do the training necessary to be ready for war. And so that's why, they're in bad shape. So, I mean, these people have just, they've destroyed this country. Biden has destroyed this country. He is the threat to this country. His administration is the threat to this country. You got people not controlling the border. You've got drugs pouring into this country. Fentanyl right now. West Virginia has the highest rate per capita of people dying from fentanyl overdose. So it matters to me. And I'm going to tell you what, we may not have a whole lot of illegals coming to this state because there's just not enough jobs. But we do have a problem with fentanyl coming to this state. And I'm going to tell you what, when you had 100,000 people in the United States that died, over 100,000 that died from fentanyl overdose last year. You know how many people died in 3 years of the Vietnam War? How many Americans died in 3 years of the Vietnam War? A little over 50,000. So think about that. 3 years, 50,000 versus 1 year, 100,000 deaths. And these are all civilian deaths. And it's the number one cause of death between 18 and 45. So you're killing your workforce. You're killing the people that are actually the next generation. If this isn't a war against America, I don't know what is. So why the hell is our military not down at the southern border right now, shutting the border down, closing the border, telling Mexico, you better shut down your southern border or we are not dealing with you. We will close our ports of entry. And then launching a war against the cartel and taking them out. We need to be doing this and putting sanctions against China, because China is actually supplying all of the precursor chemicals directly to the cartels. This is a war, folks. Absolutely. That's what this is.
I agree with you completely, Nate.
So,
Now, I
my retort to Biden is shut the hell up and take a look at yourself, because that guy is the threat to this country. He is the threat to this country, and along with his administration, and along with all of those who would stand against the Constitution, they are the enemy that our forefathers warned us about when they said, when our oaths were taken, you and I, we've taken the oath. I'll support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And we often think about that, that foreign enemy. That's easy to pinpoint, but it's hard to pinpoint sometimes, the enemy within. And the fact is we have an enemy within. Anybody that would seek to violate our constitutional rights, they have no purpose anymore, because that is the whole purpose of government, is to protect those rights.
I agree with you completely. The only thing that I would add to that is all those failures that you listed. I'm not going to say they're incompetence. I'm going to say they're by design. I think they've intentionally tried to cripple this country, and that's just, once again, the only kind of thought you can come to conclusion is because we're at war. We are at war.
It's hard to believe that it's anything other than that, because when you look at how much money that Biden has taken in from the Chinese through his son's dealings, or from the Ukrainians through his son's dealings, it's hard to believe that he's doing, making his decisions without that influencing him. Who didn't make any money from foreign countries while he was in office, or even, while he was running for office? Donald Trump.
Yep.
In fact, he didn't even take a salary. The man,
Yeah, I was gonna say, he didn't even take his paycheck. The paycheck got donated.
But yet, look who did make money: the Bidens, the Clintons. Oh, they've made a ton of money selling secrets. Having these. Look, I've seen the evidence myself: money laundering, securities and exchange fraud, public corruption, and terrorism financing. They were paying a known terrorist monthly payments, who was he was the head spokesman for the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. So Obama, I guarantee you, they got money that they brought in. So I don't trust anybody right now who is involved in these kinds of foreign deals and stuff like that. To me, I don't have a problem with people who are going to make money in foreign countries and make money representing the interests of foreign countries. Look, that's fine. But if you've ever been a foreign registered agent, you should never be able to be a public official. There should be a permanent ban. You choose your path. You either represent America or you represent the interests of other countries. And if you've taken money, that has come in, you should not be allowed to be president. You certainly should not be allowed to be a public official or in a cabinet position. And this is part of the problem. It's all about money.
Because that's how other countries, especially our adversaries, get their claws in us. They reach into the pocketbooks of these politicians, and there you have it, an explanation for these laws. Yeah. You guys, Nate Cain, candidate for House, West Virginia, District 2, correct?
Yep.
And website is Nate Cain 4. That's the number 4, WV.com. On the way out, Nate, anything you got coming up here in the next few weeks that you want to let the audience know about?
Sure. Two things. One, we got a song out. It's called Raise Some Cain. It is on Spotify. It is on Apple Music and Amazon Music and Pandora. If you subscribe to any of those services, you can get it. The song is written by, it shows the artist as Aaron Weatherholt, and but I wrote the lyrics, he wrote the music, so I'm a part, contributor to the song, and I think it's a great song, and I hope that you guys will log in and give it a listen to. It'll encourage you. Lastly, we will be tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a candidate forum in Harrison County at Brickside Cafe Bar, or Brickside Bar and Grill, and I'll be out there, and you guys can come out and see me, and I'll be speaking. So if anybody's listening and they're in West Virginia, then please come out and do that. But you can follow where we're going to be by following me on social media. I try to post where our events are. Nate Cain for WV, and you'll be able to find me. And with that, I got to run, but thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. God bless, Nate. You guys, this is the Alpha Warrior Show. I'm your host, Alpha. I'll see you on the other side. God bless everybody.
Welcome to the next generation of warfare, psychological warfare. In modern conflict, the mind is a potent weapon. Discover General Michael T. Flynn's groundbreaking guide, The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. Unlock tactics, strategies, and the mindset to navigate this cognitive battlefield that we all find ourselves in. Equip yourself against manipulation and emerge unscathed. Unleash your potential. Order now.